My name's Eli Delaney, and I have the honor of meeting some pretty cool people. These are the entrepreneurs, the artists, the creatives, the game changers that are making a positive impact in the people that they meet. And I'm a firm believer that the people that you meet can get you anywhere you want to go. And this show is my way of sharing them with you. It's my way of also helping you meet cool people.
All right, welcome back, my friends. Eli here, and we are here with another amazing guest. So this gal that I'm going to bring on in just a second, she and I met in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at an Apex event. She ended up actually talking, sharing some really cool stuff, and we hit it off, had a great conversation, renewed the conversation last week, and I was like, all right, yeah, I definitely want you on my show. So that is the whole reason we are here today. So today's guest is Misty Gilbert. She is a transformational coach, blogger, writer, and a speaker with a passion to inspire you to create the life that you want by choosing to intentionally live. She is also a TEDx speaker, and her presentation was The Art of Authenticity: How to Show Up as the Real You, which I, by the way, highly recommend you check out after you have finished listening to this one. So with that said, Misty, thank you for coming and hanging out with me today.
Thank you for inviting me. I look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, we're going to have some fun. So let's start off with the fact that you and I met through Apex at a local group hanging out, and yeah, it was just a good conversation. And I was like, all right, I like this gal. She's kind of fun. And we ended up having a great conversation last week. And I was like, all right, come share. So with that said, you got all kinds of fun stuff going on in your life. Kind of give us a little bit more history of where, what is it you do how do you help your clients? Let's just boil down with that one.
Well, as a transformational coach, my goal is to help people move past their fear, their shame, their guilt, their regret. What I find in transformational work is that the thing that keeps us from moving from where we are to where we want to go is usually either fear, shame, guilt, or regret. It can show up as a sub layer of that, which we might say is depression or lack of motivation or lack of inspiration or not real goals that we feel we can target. But generally speaking, when you dig down deeper into that, it's fear, shame, guilt, or regret. So my goal is to help people transform their thinking, their mindset, their heart set into alignment to their core values and the way that they actually live and breathe and be in alignment.
I love it. And you just brought up something. It's a really big, the big buzzword right now is like core values. There's a lot of people talking about that. Let's talk about that. What does that mean from your standpoint and what you're doing and you're helping your clients with?
Well, and I will interject here that, from the speaking standpoint, I share from my transformational coaching because that's where I do most of my speaking. But I do have 3 businesses. I do business consulting and financial services, and I'm a landlord and real estate investor. So in all 3 of my businesses, I find the reason that we don't move forward is because we aren't clear on our core values. In business consulting, for instance, a client of mine might be in the medical field and they're upset that their clients aren't paying them, whether it's a patient with their copay, their deductible, their coinsurance, or out-of-pocket expense, or a non-covered service, or their vendors that are buying products from them or whatever. And my question to them always is, are you living in alignment to that core value? If you have a core value that you want your people to pay you timely so that you have cash flow, are you paying your vendors timely? So a lot of times what we expect from other people, we ourselves are not living from. Trent Shelton's a motivational speaker here in the Fort Worth area, and he says that we need to live it, breathe it, be it. So I adopted that in my phrase that I said earlier is, are you living it? Are you breathing it? Are you being it? So what you take in and what you exude out, where is the alignment? The alignment to core values is important because if you're not aligned to what is of value to you, you will chase things that are not of value to you, things that are not of importance, and it will keep you in chaos and it will keep you disconnected, a lack of focus, and chasing what I call the shiny penny, the next biggest gig, which could be like right now, AI. So core values are important because most people haven't established those as a pillar and a foundation. When you build a house, you have to start with a foundation. You have to have something to anchor the walls and the roof and all the rooms in. Same thing with our lives on a physical level. You have to have a core. So, just in our body, we know that the heart and the brain and the stomach are all core elements of our lymphatic system, our neurological system. And if those aren't in alignment, we start having disease. Dis-ease creates disease. So in the body, same thing happens. So in business, your inner world is driven by your outer world. Same thing with your personal life. Your inner world is driven by your outer world. And a lot of people like to disconnect those, but they have to be in alignment. If they're not, you're going to have chaos.
Yeah, and I can guarantee there's a few people that are feeling a little called out right now because they're like, "Oh yeah, not quite, yeah, not quite there like I should be." So, how did you get started on this side of things? Like, how did you get into the transformational coaching side? Because we could talk about all three businesses, but let's talk about that one because I think that's the one that you have the biggest passion for that I have seen. So, let's talk about that. What led you to this path?
Well, largely because my transformational journey began around 2013, 2014. 2014 is when I implemented and started really digging into a lot of the issues in my own life because I had left a cult that I was born and raised to and been a part of for 37 years in 2013. And in that process, I started vulnerably sharing struggles, perspectives, challenges, the process of coming out of somewhere where I hadn't worn pants my entire life. I was 37 and not worn pants. Didn't have cut hair, makeup, earrings, didn't celebrate Christmas, didn't have a TV, didn't date, didn't go to sports events, on and on. So, in this process of sharing the struggles mentally, emotionally, physically, um, I learned what the true backbone and the true issue were behind my transformation, the things to move me past what was holding me in chains to that point of freedom that I really wanted. And in the crux of it, I kept coming back to fear, shame, guilt, and regret, whether that is from religion and their perspectives about God and what's right or wrong and doing God's will for your life, or whether that was from my parents and the upbringing and choices that they gave me that became habits, or whether it was from my own insecurities and what caused me to be a workaholic and dig into work 24/7 as my passion. And so transformation to me has a really deep meaning because it's affected by my personal life and how I lived for 37 years in fear of men, fear of people's rejection or acceptance of me, fear of being alone and abandoned like I had been many times prior. And those things were driving me and keeping me from freedom. And I was living a life of, yeah, fear, shame, guilt, and regret, and therefore didn't have exactly what I wanted. And in order to get there, I had to transform. I had to look at my inner world because the outer world is where we all are taught to focus. If you don't like something in your life, well, look at the outside and go fix it. And that only does one portion, and it's not true alignment to core values, to integrity, to true authenticity, which I label as being open, real, raw, and vulnerable. And so to transform, you have to be willing to go that path.
Wow. And that is, first off, thank you for sharing the story and kind of giving us a little bit of background of that kind of stuff. You know, I think that a lot of people have a hard time realizing that what we see on the surface, what we see on social media and all that kind of stuff is not, it's not as genuine as we would like it to be. And we should know better. But a lot of times people they don't share what's really going on. And I think the reason I want to bring this up is the fact that there's going to be people who hear this and they're like, okay, oh yeah, there's somebody else out there that's got kind of the same traumas that I do. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to be more, I guess authentic is the right word for it. We need to be more authentic and letting people know what's actually going on. And for me personally, that's one of the things that I see a lot of times people have a hard time with is understanding that the rest of the world is going through crazy stuff too. We're not alone. And I think that that's where work for work, like what you're doing, really makes a big difference. What, when somebody comes to you, what is what are some of the things that you're helping them with specifically? Like where are they at when they come to you, I guess is a better question for that.
Many of them are trying to figure out who they are. The ideal life that they thought that they really wanted and where they're at are not in alignment. And they're so confused to how to get themselves to where they want. The overwhelming, enormous pain that they're living in, whether that's physical, mental, emotional, financial, spiritual, relational, it can be on any one of those levels. They're not able to figure out how to release that and get to the point of really being able to have happiness.
Okay.
They think that, if I keep working to, do all these things externally, I'm going to get where I want to go. And they keep butting up against a wall and struggling deeply. So where do I help my clients? Well, a lot of my clients are men that have been put in a box in their relationship or in a business where their partners are not transparent as to what's really going on. They're not all on the same page. It could be communication issues, whether that's bosses with employees or in a marriage relationship. I've helped a lot of people navigate the things that go on behind the scenes that they're not willing to talk about. And generally, at the get go, the discussion ends up being like, I'm telling you things I've never told anybody.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's always funny because we always talk about like from a coaching standpoint, because I'm a coach as well, very different than what you do, but you at least have more of an excuse to the fact that it's like, okay, you're a coach, but kind of a therapist at the same time. I still try to figure out how I become that situation too, when I'm the techie guy. But we do need that. And, you've brought up, I thought it was very interesting. You shared that like a lot of your clients are actually men. What do you find is kind of the difference when somebody comes to you and where they're stuck? Are there differences between the men you work with and the women you work with on where those areas are, or are they very similar?
I would say there's an element they're very different, and there's an element where there's similarities. So, generally, women will be more apt to seek self-improvement throughout their life. Men tend to only do it once they get to a point that they really are at a crossroads where they want to throw up their hands and quit life. And so I think that the desperation that they come in that sense is a little bit more than what women do, because along the way, women will seek answers and they will go to counseling and they'll do different things. Generally, men think that they can figure it out. And so it becomes that point where they're no longer able to figure out who they are, what they want, how they want to live, and what's right, what's wrong. And they see where they're headed and they don't like it. And they have a great fear. And that fear is greater than the fear they're dealing with at the moment. Men tend to be different in the fact that though they may not appear to have issues disclosing what's going on behind the scenes, I find initially it's harder for men to be honest about what's going on in their head, their heart, in mind with the relationship, their business. In whatever they present, it's usually something a lot deeper than the initial problem. And that's the part that gets really fun to see unfold, is that what they think the issue is usually never the issue.
Right. That is, yeah, I can understand that one 100%. All right. So let's shift gears a little bit. Let's talk about your TED Talk. How did that come to be?
So, August 2018, I had a friend share a link with me and said that there was going to be a TEDx event here in Texas in June 2019. And he thought that I would be interested in putting an application. And so I did, and I got a response back from the local TEDx event that they did not consider my application because they did not consider the topic to be relevant. And I don't know if that was relevant to the theme that they were doing or if it's relevant at all. I'm not sure. I, as I teach, vulnerably share on social media this experience, and it came off of two other things right back to back. So I had attended a event here in Texas, and there was it was a speaking blogging course. I'm just going to be generic about it because some people might know, and not that there's a reason, but I'm not trying to give a plug to it. And in this event, there was a competition that if you shared video and content during the event, whoever got the most likes, comments, views would win an iPad. But you had to be present to win. The event ran over, and like 2 hours passed, and I stayed but till the point that I had to leave because I had a coaching client booked following that in the evening, and I needed to be able to drive home, get set up, and take that call. Probably could have stayed, but I wanted to be in my own environment because that's usually where I'd have those calls. So I left, and as I'm pulling in the driveway, I get a text from my client that he was going to need to cancel. And I was disappointed because I would have wanted to stay at the conference. And then I get an alert on my phone that the speaker of that event, the host of that event, was going live with the winner of the iPad. And I was the winner of the iPad, but I wasn't present, so I couldn't win. And so the buildup of all this, on top of getting that email, then after the end of watching that Facebook Live, that my TEDx talk was declined, I was just a bit discouraged. And so I wrote on social media, and a lot of you think that my life just works out. I get everything I want. Like, everything's beautiful. Like, here's just went down in the last 24 hours, right? And sharing that, somebody commented on my post and said, send me a link to your application, and I'll put a good word for you here in California. I didn't ask, and that was a good word for me to a TEDx event. I didn't ask when the event was going to be. I didn't ask what the topic was. I had the attitude, it's not going to happen. But I went ahead and did it. And 2 weeks later, I received notification from TEDx that my application was the last one that they chose for the speakers, and that their event was going to be happening in January 2019. And at this point, it was about the middle of November 2018. So I had just over 2 months to prepare and execute my TEDx talk. And so when you ask how it happened kind of in a accumulation of events. It was something I had said in the next 5 years, I want to be do a TEDx talk. But as far as like, did I go seek it? No, my tribe brought it to me. Mm-hmm. But I executed. I knew I had content. I knew what my mission was. I knew what my purpose was. I hired a TEDx coach to help me execute my talk. And then the next 2.5 months, I lived and breathed and be my TEDx talk every day. I practiced, I recorded it. I made it into 4 segments, and I had a whole process which we could go into, but that's how I got into a position of actually giving a TEDx talk.
That is awesome. And so, it's always fun to see how things happen with that, because, when you first, anything pops up, it's like all of a sudden it's like, oh, this did not work out the way I thought it was going to, but it ended up working out well in the end, which is, that's kind of the point of the whole thing, right? So
yeah, I mean, if you think back, if I had till July 2019 or June, July 2019 to produce that TED Talk from the first application, I'd have had almost a year, right? From the time my application went in August, September, and declined in September, to then reapplying somewhere else and getting accepted about a month after that. So yeah, sometimes we don't see it like that. And I think we all say, this didn't go like I planned. And I think that's sometimes where we get stuck, is thinking that things have to go as it's planned for it to be right. And in the end, I had more pressure on me. And it happened at a very difficult time for me, because January is one of my business times of year for my business consulting and financial services company. And so would I have chosen that? No, because that put a lot of stress on me. But in the end, I did it. I made it happen. And if I showed you my TEDx rehearsal, you would go, how did you do that a week later?
Nice. So here's my next question for you. When you got off a stage, how did you feel?
Amazing.
Good.
Amazing. I spoke to approximately about 500 people at a high school. That's where mine was held in California. I was born and raised in California, so there was some significance of going back to my home state in a town not too far from where I was born. And not only that, but 25 years to the date that to the year that I was raped. So just some significant little boulders, if you will, that made me feel like this is where I was supposed to be. This is where my message was supposed to be given. And then I had a line of people wanting to talk to me, and that blew me away. It was very emotional for me to have that experience, to have shared so vulnerably and in 17 and a half minutes my talk, which the goal was to keep it under 18 minutes or less, according to TED's guidelines.
Yep.
And for those that don't know, TED is a platform that's paid to usually 5,000 or more people. The TEDx is a franchise of TED, and they're independently owned and operated and done independently and can be any size of crowd. So, and it's not paid. So for people that are inquiring as to the difference, but the experience of being able to come out and execute that talk to a wide variety of ages in a high school, it wasn't just high school students in the audience, and then know that you're impacting the world with your message was incredible.
Nice. I love it. Awesome. So let's dive into that a little bit. And you mentioned something about how you prepared for the talk. What were some of the things that you did that, because I know a lot of people that want to get into doing TED Talks, and it's not just TED Talks, it's any kind of presentation. But what did you go through in order to prepare? Because that's a big deal. That's not just talking to a Rotary. Nothing wrong with Rotary, but that's a small crowd, and this is a big deal. So what were the processes that you kind of went through with that?
I would say two things. One, I did research and studied other people's TED Talks. There is even a channel on YouTube with a critic that takes TED Talks and chops them up into pieces and critiques them. I listened to them. I read blogs about how to create a good speech. What are the good key elements to have? How do you execute a talk and, win all your audience, even if it's a topic that they necessarily wouldn't be for or are against. And then my routine was to daily practice my talk. And that was standing in front of a mirror, that was recording it into an app, listening to it back to myself. Then usually would go for a walk. And while I listened to myself talk, I tried to keep up with saying it myself. And then I wrote my talk out and rewrote my talk out and rehearsed it in front of people. So it was kind of multiple layers of the repetition is the mother of all learning. So reading it, writing it, speaking it, listening to it, and minimum of 2 hours every day was what I did. And so I broke it into 4 sections to try to make it more digestible, and then would do that in the morning, during a workout, in the evening, right before I would go to sleep. I would listen to it also to get it in my psyche. I didn't share it in front of people, more than about 10 people, but I did try to mix my crowd of male, female, different types of perspectives, younger, older, people who are speakers, people who aren't, they're just business professionals, and people that were just my friends. But I didn't try to throw so many people in there that I kept getting, conflicting input from lots of areas. I tried to just keep it to a handful and then work with that. And then, of course, my TEDx coach was also part of. We had weekly calls, and we would talk through and practice.
Nice. Very cool. I wanted you to share that because I think it's something that it doesn't matter if it's just, if it's a TEDx, I shouldn't say just a TEDx, but a TEDx talk versus any other presentation. I wanted you to share kind of, okay, how do you prepare for something like that? Because some people overanalyze and over prepare, and they do it in a negative way. It ends up hurting them in the end. Some people, many people, tend to just wing it. And I think it's really good to kind of have a flow of an idea to help somebody in that area. So thank you for sharing that. I think that'll be helpful.
I think, as a speaker, understanding who your audience is important. But like for me, I was recording it for the global effect of it being recorded, not necessarily what would happen live. And so those two things too also help you understand, like, my end result is a recording, not necessarily who's in my crowd, but I want the crowd to get the same effect. So what do you want your crowd to walk away with? But I do think you can over prepare, but I think most of us don't ever do enough to prepare. In a speaking talk that I heard from Rudy Giuliani back when he was New York City, what was his title? My mind just went blank. He said that for any talk that he did, he said he would prepare 4 times as much. So if his talk was an hour, it needed 4 hours of preparation minimum. That was his guideline. It was just little things like that through the years that I've gathered from people. And then just the fact that we all learn differently through reading, writing, speaking, hearing, and to incorporate all of those in my process helps me reinforce my message.
I love that. And that is so true. And thank you for sharing that, because that is a big piece that I think people, they don't realize how, okay, how do I prepare properly for something of this magnitude? What are we doing? And you said something that is really, I think it's really important to call out, that most people would just glaze over, which is the fact that you had a very specific intention with that presentation. It wasn't to speak in front of an audience. It was for the recording. And I love that you did that, because so many people don't think about that. It's like as an example, like this podcast. Okay. So yeah, the podcast is going to get out there. It's going to get published and people are going to listen to it, which is awesome. But it's also that how to practice it, how to use the content, how to figure out, listen to it again and go, okay, this is something maybe I should have said differently, or here's something I need to bank in and talk about more on. Those kind of things people skip over a lot of times. And especially in the speaking, coaching, the industry expert space, which I work with a lot of people in that arena, where they skip those kind of pieces. They don't see the value underneath the getting in front of an audience. And so I want to say something about that. I want to bring that out, because I think that was so important that people catch that.
Yeah, and I think that there's pressure, like when you're going to be a TEDx coach, right? A TEDx speaker. There's a lot of pressure into performing and to executing this amazing thing. And it is amazing. You stand out on red carpet, like there's things to it that really elevate the speech compared to others. But I think also what helps is to understand where your weaknesses are. When I get really, really nervous, I generally start speaking really fast. And so I practiced my talk both ways, really, really fast, allowing myself to be nervous and talk really, really fast, and then to force myself to slow it down and say it in a way that people could really grasp. Yeah. What is she trying to say? What are the points she's trying to make? And not get lost when I'm telling everything, because I have 18 minutes to do it. And so, understanding, again, there were ways that I felt more comfortable than in all of that practice. But by doing all of it every day and setting that I have to do it for 2 hours, that meant, like, if I wanted to do 2.5, by the time I got there, I could keep going. But if I was exhausted, if I wasn't really feeling the synchronicity going on and just tension, then I would stop at 2 hours. I've done my 2-hour quota, take a rest, go to bed, put this project away. It's there tomorrow. And also to be willing to ruthlessly edit along the way. We changed my script two weeks to go till my talk, because there was something that every time I was working on it with my TEDx coach, it just was snagging and I wasn't getting there. And so I scrapped it all, went and rewrote it, and it flowed. And that's the thing, is I think when you're feeling that resistance, being willing to take a step back and stop trying to force it, it's out of alignment.
I love that. That is great. That is definitely a very powerful tip. So I think that's a good one to just say, okay, here's something you need to be aware of. it's okay to scrap it and start over. And
scrap it and start over.
Yeah, and it ain't just about writing a presentation either. There's more to it than that.
Mm-hmm. There is. There is. And we can get caught up in, and there's a lot of tips I could give you too that I learned from other things and through the process. The day of rehearsal, you had to practice on stage in front of a TEDx board of 12 people. And in that process, they all got to critique you. I totally literally bombed my rehearsal. I mean, so bad, halfway through it, with my notes in front of me, I bent over to the audience of those 12 that were particularly critiquing me. There were some others, and just said in tears, I can't do this. And my coach is like, we're with you. We support you. Keep going. She was encouraging, but their facial and body language was clear. I was bombing it. And I knew I was bombing it. I watched it later and all I did was cry. Yeah. But back up. I had been told I would take the stage at 5:00. And I didn't take the stage at 5:00 because they, throughout the day, had electrical issues and had to go get new cords and this and that and the other thing. And so it was like 9:00 California time that I took the stage, Texas time, and I had flown in the day before. So my body clock is still on Texas time. I was exhausted. It was way past my bedtime. And I'd been standing on my feet in high heels for hours waiting to do this, not eaten, not had enough water. I wasn't hydrated. So all that went into the nervousness that I had. But it also fueled me the next day. And I was like, you get up, you are. And then from then, because it was a week and I had stayed in California, every day I practiced my TED Talk pretty much all day outside of yoga, walks in nature, eating and sleeping. That's how I dealt with the fact that this is not going to work. Like, if you're doing this, your TEDx talk will not get published. It was that bad, right? Like, it was that disconnected. I stumbled, but I got to see myself on camera. And that also, I would say, if I were to redo anything, would be add the video component to it. Mm-hmm. I did audio, I stood in front of a mirror, but having an actual camera on me to see and assess myself would have been another really good tool.
Right. I love it. That is awesome. All right. So we're starting to wrap up here. Got 2 final questions for you. Second to the last question. This is the Meet Cool People show. So what does meeting cool people mean to you?
Well, I read a book by Keith Ferrazzi, Never Eat Alone, and that impacted me because I'm single and I love making new connections. And so turning into any opportunity to meet somebody over a meal, I prefer to do. If I can't do that, I'm just going to try to connect via Zoom and schedule meeting a new person every week. I also, it also was what fueled me to do something I call sharing each other's lives, which is to do something every year for random people to encourage, support, and inspire them. And so to me, meeting cool people means putting yourself out there in what people typically say is uncomfortable circumstances and meet people that maybe wouldn't normally be in your circle and learn their story, their life.
I love it. That is awesome. All right. Last question. This is the easy one. People are going to want to talk to you. They're going to see what kind of cool stuff is going on with you. What is the best way for people to find you?
On all of your favorite platforms on social media or the internet, I'm under the handle Misty W. Gilbert. So whether that's Instagram, Facebook, X, which was previously Twitter, or TikTok, or Pinterest, or whatever your favorite platform is, I'm on all of them. You'll find me engaging in the most authentic conversation on Facebook.
Awesome. So yeah, the artist formerly known as Twitter. Let's just go with that one. We like that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Misty, thank you so much for coming and hanging out today. It was a good conversation, had a lot. And I learned a lot about you that I didn't know, which is good. I love it. Yeah. So with that,
I enjoyed the conversation with you too.
Good. Awesome. So everybody else, get out there. Have an amazing rest of the week. You guys know how to get a hold of me if you need anything. And we will see you on the next show. Take care.
And that wraps up another Meet Cool People show. Now, if you like what you heard, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or review so I can help introduce these amazing cool people to even more amazing cool people. And just remember, meeting cool people is just the beginning. You need to have a system in place to follow up with the amazing people that you meet. This is exactly what we do for our clients. If you'd like to see if my team and I can help you, go to followuprockstar.com and check out the case study video to see exactly how we're helping our clients turn casual connections into cash clients for life. Again, go to followuprockstar.com and we'll see how we can work together to turn you into a follow-up rockstar.